Hey everyone, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. We're going to wait until exactly 11 a.m. Eastern, and then we'll get rolling. So again, thanks everybody for joining, and we're going to get started in literally like another 30 seconds, just to wait for exactly 11 a.m. And thanks. So if you joined a few seconds early, thanks again, and we'll get started in just a moment. We're waiting for everybody to come in. So again, thanks everybody for joining us today on today's talk on the data's team journey to positive ROI. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and you're going to receive an email with a link to the recording tomorrow. So you can either replay that or share with your colleagues, either way. So be sure to look out for that. Also, all attendees are muted and the chat is turned off. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A section in the Zoom control panel. We'll do our best to get all of those questions answered at the end of today's session. We'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions during today's talk, just enter them in the Q&A in the Zoom control panel, and we'll get to those at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So just really quickly about Rivery, literally 2 minutes, I promise. For those of you who aren't familiar, we actually started as an internal tool at one of the world's largest BI consulting firms. We basically were looking for a data stack platform and it didn't exist out there. So we created it ourselves, and that's how Rivery came to be. We have offices all over the world, and we work with both small and large companies. The platform itself really tries to address everything you're going to need in a data stack in terms of both ingestion, transformations, data activation, orchestration. In terms of transformations, you can do different types. I won't go into too much about that here, but definitely we created the solution to address basically every type of need you could have in terms of your data stack. And I won't go over everything here, but one of the great things again about it is that it really is a complete SaaS ELT platform. So we have both the extract and load, the orchestration and the transformations, data management, but we also address things like the data development lifecycle, data operations, and pre-built solutions. We can really get you up and started literally in minutes. So I promised you this would be short. So let's go ahead and pass it over to Taylor, who will take you through today's talk. So take it away, Taylor.
Hi, everyone. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. You see that, hopefully.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I'm excited to get started here. So I'll start off with a quick intro to myself, and then we'll get into the agenda and the content. Just to give you guys some insight into my experience with data. So I'm currently the VP of Data Labs at Rivery, but I started in the data services world as a BI developer and eventually managing data engineering and BI projects across different industries, different size companies. So lots of migrations to the cloud and data democratization across these orgs. And this is where I first felt the pain of data teams, and specifically, having data projects prove themselves, their success criteria and ROI to the business, and learning how important measuring impact of a data use case is. About 3 years ago, I joined a vendor, Rivery, where I'm still at now, to initially start the customer solutions arm, so sales engineering, success, and support engineering at the time. And so there, our customers are also data teams. So really empathizing with those use cases, through obstacles, through triumphs. And this is really the time where our internal use cases around data began. And so my most recent role and current role is the VP of the data team here. And so now more than ever, I myself and my team are accountable for the ROI of our internal use cases. So that brings us to the discussion today. Next slide. Okay, so what are we going to go over today? So what this session is broken into parts. First, an autobiographical case study. So this is where we're going to review how Rivery first ventured into the world of operational analytics and our learnings and results throughout. Secondly, I will share some admittedly biased opinions about the state of operational analytics, or what there's also some buzzwords in the industry now around like reverse ETL and data activation, and what the growth of these types of use cases means for data teams and what the future holds, as they grow. Thirdly, because I'm nice, there'll be some architecture diagrams throughout, which I know is everyone's favorite thing as well. So I'll go ahead and get started. So getting into the content here, firstly, what I want to address are the main pains of showing ROI in the data world. So like, what is actually so hard? Where do things get lost in showing value and influence of a data team, or that a data team has on the business? And so I think historically, and in most companies still today, data teams are seen as some sort of cost center, right? And this is for a few reasons. The first being that organizations tend to answer problems with the mentality of, hiring more people will solve it. And these people eventually become, what the industry has coined like human middleware. And what this really means is that instead of hiring data practitioners to do net new things and create net new value, we are hiring people to kind of just manage existing inefficiencies and keep the wheels turning for certain data needs, thus becoming middleware. Secondly is the tooling or technology. So there's throughout the last decade been different phases of buzzwords, and I think vendors especially like to latch on to these in terms of marketing. Currently, we're like in the nth version of the modern data stack, where like seemingly new categories of data needs pop up out of thin air, and each one requires a new, hot best of breed tool, right? And this, promises that our lives will become so much easier if we just adopt X new technology. And so I think it's not necessarily the tooling or technologies that are bad or under deliver, but I think it's our expectations that technology will solve more, than process and efficiencies and communication will. And then thirdly, which more directly relates to operational analytics, is that most existing data consumption still happens in a reactive manner, right? In some BI tool or reporting, and doesn't inspire or force some action to be taken. And so in terms of strategy, we need to think about, okay, how do we equip our end users, not just with the data they need, but with the direction they need to take with it as well. And so, when we're thinking about operational analytics, I first want to define when I'm talking about this, what I actually mean, what constitutes an operational analytics use case. So I broke it into kind of three criteria. First being that the consumption of said use case happens in an operational system. So, we're sending data back into a source system that is like a day-to-day operational tool, whether that's a CRM or some sort of collaboration tool or engagement platform. This is where we are consuming and taking action, which leads us to the second criteria, which is that this must inspire or require some clearly defined action by an end user. So when XYZ happens and I get a push alert, that means I have to do Y. And then lastly, because this is operational analytics we're talking about, and not just an operational use case by itself, that the source of these use cases should be some sort of analytical data set, right? And for the case of this, and the case of companies moving to the cloud, I'm saying here that the source should be some sort of cloud data warehouse or data lake, and our target or destination in the sense is an operational system. All right, so digging into the Rivery use case. So I'll set you guys up with some background here. So Rivery, if you're not familiar, we are a SaaS ELT platform, and everything in our platform revolves around data pipelines. So building data pipelines, maintaining them, monitoring them, et cetera. So when users are creating free trials with us, that is a very important success criteria for us to flag. A key event for us to track is, are people attempting to create pipelines, and are they doing so successfully? So this actually started, let's go in the past about 2 years, when, we have a free trial. We want to improve our conversion rates to the inbound leads that we're getting into free trials, actually converting to paying customers. So our hypothesis was, if we can use our data about what's happening in our trial accounts and personalize outreach in a technical manner, meaning understanding what they were trying to attempt and giving some sort of technical recommendation from a technical persona, we thought this would increase engagement of these users in our trials and thus increase conversion to some sort of paying customer. So this was our initial hypothesis. And really, we didn't really know what reverse ETL, data activation, like this wasn't really a thing or a coined term at the time. We just knew we needed to be proactive, that we wanted to put this data in the hands of our field teams, specifically our field teams with some sort of technical persona or background that could directly engage with these users. So what did this look like at the very beginning? This was, the components of our stack, let's say, for this use case. So we had source systems. We have our operational database, let's say, in MySQL, where we store every single execution of a pipeline and the metadata about what happened with said execution. So did it succeed? Did it fail? What was the error message? What were some of the key configuration points of the pipeline? So what was the source they were trying to attempt? If it was, Twitter ad, Facebook ads, or some sort of database replication. What was the destination they were trying to send data to? And then Salesforce is our CRM. So when we're connecting all the dots here, we really wanted to understand, what are the accounts that are in a trial stage that have had some sort of failed pipeline attempt, that also we know who the owners, who should be accountable, right, to take action, when this happens. So we needed data points from all three of these systems to be combined into some sort of analytical data set. And that's what happened in Snowflake. So we're bringing this data into Snowflake. This is where we're running the logic or transformation to combine this data. Say, okay, who is the owner of this in our CRM, and comparing that to the usage actually in the product. And then for the purpose of this use case, initially our operational system was our main source of collaboration internally, which is Slack. So the idea was, okay, can we just get a proactive Slack message to the owner with all the information they need about what happened in this person's trial, so that they can then go and know exactly how to engage with this person. So we had inputs. The key event or conditions was that there was a trial account with some sort of pipeline failure, and that it was a certain let's say stage in our sales life cycle, and then the output was that personalized alert with all the information that they need to engage. So what did this look like architecturally? We had ingestion happening into Snowflake, and naturally us being Rivery, we very much speak our own language here, eat our own dog food, whatever metaphor, but we're using Rivery to bring this into Snowflake. We're doing the transformations within Snowflake, orchestrating them there, and then we're actually calling out to Slack. Slack has a really nice incoming webhook capability where basically you just get a URL for a Slack channel, and so we could use a simple custom REST API call, all orchestrated via Rivery, to call out to these owners. And a key here as well that something I think we did right at the beginning was that we partnered closely with our domain team or our field team in this use case, and basically had an agreed upon action that they would take and an agreed upon SLA. So initially it was, okay, when we're getting these proactive alerts, we want to respond with some sort of personalized technical engagement in, one business day. So this was the initial use case. We were very proud to actually build this and get it working. But then we quickly realized that, when asked, how it was going, we had no real way to track or understand the results. Like, was it actually increasing conversions or not? We just got it working and thought that was great. So phase 2 of this was, we said, okay, let's actually take a historical audit of every single detection, every single, proactive alert that we're sending. And with that, we're also recording, the trial account ID, the owner ID, so that we can tie this back in the future to what actually happens with those accounts. So do they convert? And if so, what are the revenue dollars generated? So that really we're building our first kind of attribution model almost for the data team in how did these proactive alerts influence revenue that actually happened. So this was a big milestone in the data team actually being able to tie what we're doing directly to the number one metric of ROI, which is dollars. And so that was great. We eventually wanted to take a step further, saying, okay, we've proved the usefulness of this, the value. Could we automate any of this? Right now we're creating these alerts, which is great, but it's still a little manual in terms of people have to kind of gather this information and send out email addresses or emails, et cetera. So the next step was, for specific types of error codes that happen, can we know already what our recommendation would be? So if it's a permissions issue, or if it's something that we can identify just within the data itself, can we automate these with some sort of engagement platform? So we use Intercom internally. And the idea is, that we, for certain types of errors, can just essentially give like an in-app notification or automate some sort of personalized message that would be the same kind of, look and feel as if it was coming from a person manually. So this is the current stage we're in terms of this use case. And so, what did this actually mean in terms of results? What happened? And here's a nice example of a very redacted, but also very real example. Why it's so redacted. But this was kind of the initial Slack alerts where we say, okay, what is the name of this account? What stage is it in? Who are the owners, like the sales owner and the sales engineer? What source were they trying and what was there? This one was, Twitter ads to BigQuery, where it was clearly a permission that they were lacking on the BigQuery side in order to complete this. So some things that we actually weren't expecting to happen, but did, were that it started to foster this community of like a proactive data culture. So because these are Slack alerts being posted in a collaboration tool, they can actually start a conversation internally. So we saw collaboration happen between our SDRs, our account executives and SEs on like how to actually, reach out and engage with a specific lead. Maybe someone had already been in contact. So it really helped the teamwork effort of our go-to-market as well. And we did see just, improvement across the board, just numbers wise in terms of conversion. So in the months before or leading up to this change and after, we saw around a 40% increase with what we call this kind of like automated sales assist or proactive sales assist workflow. So, that was great in terms of the first use case seeing positive results. And thus, once we saw how being proactive with data could help against our bottom line, we wanted to do this more and more. So these are some additional use cases that this led to. So just some examples is, we are a consumption-based platform. So we can do a lot with projections of consumption, overconsumption or underconsumption, and helping our field teams understand where a certain account is at and if they should take action, reach out, have playbooks around this, as well as some other use cases for creating custom segmentation in engagement platforms, as well as our marketing platforms as well. So in terms of some learnings from this, or what I'll call must-have, now that we've kind of been through an end-to-end use case or multiple of them, When we're starting something from scratch, and something I would urge others to think about venturing into use cases like this is, number one, first and foremost, is understanding how you're going to measure results, and being able to flag, all of the opportunities you're creating to take action with the actions that were really taken, which with the final or bottom of the funnel, right, which is the results actually gained. And I think going through this exercise beforehand and defining it actually is really helpful for understanding a use case at large and how it affects the business in general. If you understand how you're going to measure it, then the goals are kind of already set in place, right, for what this will lead to as a data use case. Another main point here is having that agreement or partnership with the domain team that you're serving. It's super important for them to understand what the playbook will be, what the process will be, and where they have to take action, so that this funnel really makes sense in terms of actions detected versus actions taken. And is the action inspired or required? This just means, is it something that is a must do, or is it more a recommendation? Is it just inspiring you to do something? Data as a product mindset, I think with any other data use case, these should be treated the same as the analytical data set you're producing with the orchestration to send data into back into your source system. All of this as one should be treated as a product. And I think some things actually are much easier with these because they are very domain driven. The findability and accessibility of these kind of data sets, because they might be in the form of push alerts, let's say, they're inherently findable and accessible. And then the usefulness, again, ties back to the first point, which is if we're from the get-go understanding the results that are happening here, we know what's useful, we know this is valuable, and then all that's left after that is to make it more efficient, right, to automate what we can. The last thing is something I want to talk about is a true analytical need. What I mean by this is do an actual real assessment before you start developing. Is there some analytical element to this, or is it truly just an operational use case? Because when you add your data warehouse into the mix, you're naturally adding a middleman, right? So make sure that this middleman is truly needed. So for this case, we needed a place where we connect our CRM to our product usage data. So this kind of connection or handshake sits in our data warehouse in Snowflake. So we knew we needed this as our kind of source data set. But if the use case simply entails, I just need to sync data from one application to another, from my marketing platform to my CRM, you may not need your data warehouse at all. And you're kind of just rebuilding the wheel with, while using, very expensive data warehouse credits in the meantime. So that was our kind of end-to-end example. I do want to take a step back and talk about the larger picture. So I think, it's a very buzzy thing currently, is how can we further combine the analytical work with the operational? And I think the reverse ETL data activation is a big part of growing that number of use cases. So what does that actually mean in the future as this continues to grow for data teams and architectures? And this is where the architecture diagrams will come in. I want to paint a little picture with these. So first, I want to show what I like to call most companies have something like this data stack. So this is, your classic, we have our source systems, we have ingestion into some cloud warehouse, cloud data lake, and we're doing transformations there, whether that's, in SQL or in some sort, Python, Spark, whatever that may be. And then we have, different data sets that are curated for different domains that maybe a data practitioner is using or are feeding some BI tool. So if across the bottom, instead of looking at, okay, what are these stages? What do they do? What is their definition? If we look at this by ownership, then we can see that on the left, we see, okay, the domain teams own our source systems, but all of this kind of bloat, let's say, in the middle is owned by the data team. And even the BI analysis parts are, sometimes owned by the data team, sometimes shared with different domain teams. So what happens when we add some more to that, right? We add reverse ETL and activation for these operational analytics use cases, and we're sending data back to source systems. You can see that from this slide to this, the little bubble for transformations gets a little wider. And that's because naturally, when you're doing reverse ETL or prepping data, that analytical data set to power these use cases, there are more transformations and logic required. You have to write, the conditions that this needs to meet, the prep data to get it in the format that you need to send back to these APIs. So naturally, you're just kind of bloating what you're already transforming data-wise. So this, as these use cases can grow and grow and kind of get more bloated. And, I fear that this will kind of grow the ownership of the data team in a very centralized way, right? We're just kind of adding another link to the chain of all of, the centralized flow that the data teams have to manage, in addition to like across the top with, the cataloging and observability. So what is an answer to this, a possible answer to this? There's a lot of talk recently about, okay, where are places that, we can decentralize ownership? Some of that is, this paradigm called data mesh, which I think is great, but it's not always possible for every single company. They don't always have the resources and the buy-in to do something completely, right, decentralized. So what can we do in the meantime to minimize this bloat, even if it's not fully adopting something like data mesh? And what I recommend is, as much as possible, trying to make this transformation layer lean, right? So what is owned by our data engineers, so our data model, these core things for our company in terms of modeling our business, make us, lean and as clear semantically as possible, so that more and more the activation use cases, the operational analytics use cases can start to be owned by domain teams who have domain expertise. So if you're thinking about like your marketing ops, your rev ops, sales ops, et cetera, these are very data literate people who have domain expertise. And so this shift by no means is an easy one, but I think is the way we need to start thinking if we're going to start to decentralize what a data team owns. All right, so to summarize some of the overall learnings thus far from experiencing these use cases head on, as well as guiding some of our clients through them. One is, in accordance to what I just showed, just adding onto the pile of things that data teams need to maintain. So think, monolithic. Something to be wary of is, are these use cases purely operational or analytical? And also, is it something that, a team with domain expertise can own? Second is model for business results. So this might be the most important by far, is thinking about how are we going to obtain and measure results from the onset, and model your use case as such, so that you can directly tie and prove to leadership, executive teams, exactly the ROI or the influence that this use case that the data team built out it proved in terms of value. Required domain team partnership. This one is huge as well in terms of having an actual playbook and an SLA. If we're doing something operational in a source system, then the idea is the end users who are using those source systems need to be aware, right, that this is required. And lastly, don't reverse ETL just to say reverse ETL. I know it's a very hot topic in terms of using your data warehouse as a source, activating your data, your metadata. But I think before starting any use case, really think about, is this something we need our data warehouse for and we need our data team to own? Or is it simply just, syncing one system to another, replicating one system to another? there are plenty of, application to application tools out there like Zapier, Trade.io that can just, have this event-based sync into your CRM, for example, and that might be all you need. Reverse ETL, I would say you'd want to really make a point for there is some logic happening in our warehouse that is not happening anywhere else. So this is where we need to actually use this data set as our source to, feed this use case. And lastly, what I'll leave you with is some, I guess, predictions or musings about the future. So both from the sense of stuff we're starting to look at internally, as well as things that I hear in the field, like all of our client base are, data teams going through things similar that we are. One thing I'm seeing pop up a lot are kind of new softwares or applications that are actually data warehouse native, meaning that they're built on top of things like Snowflake or like a Databricks. So it would actually negate the need for any sort of reverse ETL, because inherently, as you are inputting or entering things into these products, they're already writing that into a Snowflake table, for example. And I think we're going to see more and more of this in terms of having actual applications built on top of data warehouses, especially as data warehouses, as these tools become more and more hybrid in the sense that they can have analytical data sets and operational tables, or data sets meant to be operational. Second is the rise of, I'm calling it internal data app tooling, but some tools I've seen that are really interesting are Retool, Superblocks, tools like this. Basically, they allow for like an ops team or a data team to just make a really quick like self-service UI and have it actually take action. And they sync with data warehouses, with APIs, so you can kind of build these flows for your internal teams. So it's like, let's say your go-to-market team for addressing these alerts and have it actually call out to other systems and build a whole flow in a super easy way, and actually build a UI for it. So it's the perfect type of things for operational analytic needs. So I foresee these growing in market share, definitely. And then lastly, consolidation. I think we're kind of coming to the normal curve of where, the modern data stack has been growing in terms of different categories, to where these categories are getting so thin that, you need maybe 10, 12 different tools in a stack, or that's, what's recommended, let's say. I see a lot of consolidation, not just, and I don't mean necessarily like acquisitions, although I think that might happen as well, but I mean in tools kind of spreading, taking the opposite route, where they're going to start spreading into other categories. There's going to be lots of overlap with these different types of tools. And I think the real winners of that game will be the most flexible technologies, right? So, and that's also a recommendation I'd say for purchasing technology is think not just about what this tool can do, but what can it integrate with and how seamlessly can it do that, so that it's a lot more future-proof for this like very fast-moving data market. Yeah, and I will leave you guys with that. I'll open it up to QA.
Thanks a lot, Taylor. So at this point, we are going to open up to Q&A. You do have in your Zoom control panel a little Q&A button. So if you press on that, you can enter your questions, and we'll be around for a little more to answer those questions while we are waiting for people to answer or to enter anything in the Q&A. By all means, you could check us out if you want more information, or just speak with one of our data experts if you want to know how we might help you address some of the same things that we've addressed ourselves and help other customers. So yeah, with that, like I said, we're just going to wait a bit and see what's going on in the Q&A. Okay, so the first question, excellent question. So the first question to come in is, did we have to navigate friction in using new tools with like a CTO? And how do we address that in terms of integrating new tools or new solutions, which, and I'll kind of embellish maybe the question, maybe there's definitely a need and understanding from the domain team, but the CTO might be, let's say, a little reluctant or add some friction to adding new tools. So how would you suggest to deal with that type of situation?
Yeah, I mean, internally, I think there's always a process of proving value, right? That we need X new tool. I think we've had the luxury a little bit, especially in the earlier days, of being like a fast-paced startup that, we could start using things really quickly or use like a freemium value or a premium version and set up. But I think, now it's very much, understanding what would be the value proposition of this new tool in terms of trying to delineate any friction there. I'd say for the most part, we've been very fortunate to have super data focused and pro data leadership in terms of saying, okay, if this is something that's going to help us leverage and be more proactive and more valuable with our data set, then, it's something we'll initially buy into. But again, I think it comes back to my last point of flexibility is key, right? If it's something that we can easily integrate with, or easily scale up or scale down with, like that might actually mean more to me in the short term than, price, for example, if it's something that I know could make our lives easier in the future.
Excellent. I'll add 2 cents to that. And something you brought up actually, Taylor, is the whole ROI. At the end of the day, the numbers speak for themselves. And I think a lot of times when you can see what other companies have done with specific solutions, like 40% increase in trial to paid customer, or whatever the ROI is, which is relevant to your own company, that's kind of what it comes down to. So there's another question. This is not, I'll just ask it and you can go ahead and answer it. But how does Rivery handle dynamic scaling, specifically if there is an instant and unexpected peak? I can imagine like a Black Friday or something. So when there's a lot of scaling which has to happen all at once, how does Rivery handle that?
Yeah, I think, there's different ways I'd say the Rivery platform scales. There's, it's just like we're doing a replication or database migration, and it's a large data set. There is an automatic kind of distributive nature to loading that in terms of just ingesting data. There's also ways you can control how much you're sending. So for like the reverse ETL use cases, being able to kind of use our logic capabilities to create like different size batches and iterate over those. So you know exactly how much kind of volume you're sending with each call, because with reverse ETL especially, you also have to comply to the rate limits, et cetera, of the source system you're sending data to, not just ingesting from. But then just overall, the Rivery platform in general, it's completely multi-tenant, right? So basically, we have separation for kind of all of our SaaS accounts. But yeah.
Yeah. One thing which just to reiterate is, since Rivery is a SaaS, so we just, whatever resources we need to scale, we can scale dynamically, just like with, almost any SaaS cloud solution, as long as you have in place whatever, you need. So like a Netflix, the same way they can scale unexpectedly, we can as well. There's another question in terms of any specific BI tools we use to actually visualize ROI or other insights from our use cases.
Yeah, definitely. So, this session was specifically for operational analytics. We also maintain, we currently use Tableau in-house. So that's for kind of our like foundational, North Star KPIs and more like reactive analysis of your like traditional BI. And then this is kind of, in addition with how we can, enable people, in the field or, in their actual operational tools. But yes, I think BI is still very much a necessity here.
Okay, awesome. There's a few more kind of very Rivery specific questions, which I think we can address offline directly with the people who are asking. but I'm just waiting, I guess, now for in terms of any other specific questions. Sounds like Taylor, you did a great job. If there's no questions, maybe you covered everything. But I will say I learned a lot from this, and I think my biggest takeaway from our internal process of doing this is that the best learnings always come from just starting to do something. I think there are so many things that we saw internally when we just started to do it. And then, like you even said, there's unexpected things that, you don't know what you don't know. And it's always best to just start doing something. Keep in mind, you're not going to get everything perfect the first time, but you'll get a lot of learnings, and then you can always iterate. But yeah, just to kind of don't wait until it's perfect to start doing something. That's what I would say is my biggest takeaway from our internal usage. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Taylor, before we let everybody go?
No, that's it.
Okay, so just real quick, before I go, one last tiny thing. There will be a survey as soon as I close this webinar. There will be a survey. Please, if you could take 2 seconds just to answer 2 quick questions, it would be super appreciated. So again, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.